Welcome to Commsverse. This session is called Teams Adoption Kill the Top 5 Objections Before They Even Happen, and will be presented to you by Mark Thompson.
Hello folks, just introducing myself. I am Mark Thompson. I'm going to be running this session with you. I'm going to start off by thanking the sponsors, because without them, this session couldn't run. Okay, I'm also going to suggest that after the session, you go through Teams and you have a look at their channels. They've got some great information going on there. They've also got some really good giveaways. Okay, so it's definitely worth you going over for a look. But let me just tell you a little bit more about me. So I'm an Office 365 and Teams trainer. I'm based in Solihull in the UK. Social media wise, if you want to connect with me, just do a search for Super Simple 365 anywhere and you'll get in touch. For this session, I just want to give thanks to the Inform team. So most of the initial slides that you're going to see was created on their time, and they're happy for me to share them with you. And a lot of the good work that was done by myself and other colleagues that led to the information I'm going to share with you was done within the framework of a project that they were running. Okay, so I just have to acknowledge them. Okay, so I was the Smarter Working lead for a very large UK government department. I can't tell you who they are because we don't have the okay to talk about all the details, but they had around 8,000 staff, and we ran the project from early 2018 to earlier this year. So it's a good long adoption project. We went right from the initial stages of showing people Teams for the first time up until earlier this year, where we were ready to turn Skype off. We had almost everybody trained, and we were getting ready to withdraw. Then the coronavirus came along, and one day, nearly 8,000 people were sent home. They went home, opened their laptops, a good chunk of them opened Teams, and they just got on with the job like it had never happened. They just picked up from where they picked up off yesterday. And a big part of that was because of the way the adoption program was run. Okay, but out of that has come some of the lessons that we're going to be covering. So there's a little bit of the background that we had. What we found, and this is useful because of the volume, the amount of people we were training. Initially, it was face-to-face while we fine-tuned the different courses, and then it was more remote training. Initially by Skype and then by Teams. But what we found that during the excite and the equip stages, so this is the initial letting people know about it, just the initial engagement and getting people excited about Teams coming, and then the equip, which is like the training stage, we repeatedly heard people saying that they do not understand where Teams fits in and how they should use it. Okay, so straight away there's this confusion. It doesn't matter what you're going to teach them after that, because they're preoccupied with the fact they don't know how it fits in. And what they're talking about is the systems they've already got. So is it replacing OneDrive? A common question was, is it replacing SharePoint? And then they've got different organizations have got different document management systems, different ways of doing things. So we had to handle that. That was done at the early stage. And then we always get somebody in the room who said, it's just another thing I have to check. It's just another thing I have to do. And to be fair to them, they've probably had a long time of IT rolling out new systems and not taking anything off them, just giving them more things to do. So I'm going to show you how we handled those two, how we get those two objections out of the way nice and early, so people are in the right mindset to learn the clicky button stuff that you're going to go on to later. So the next 3 points here. This is the embed stage. So this is where you've done your training, you've rolled the product out, and you just have to make sure that the momentum is kept up and it embeds in. So the new technology sticks and new ways of working sticks. And what we found is that when we went back to people, they would often say they couldn't find anything in Teams. Okay, they didn't know how to search. They just couldn't find anything, and of course, if you join too many teams, too many channels, too many chats, it can get a little bit like that. But we didn't know people were having that until we went back afterwards and spoke to them. They can't keep track of chats. That was another common one. The chat area just became just a rabble and a noise, and they just couldn't keep track. They didn't know what they read, what they hadn't, and they found that was an ongoing issue with Teams. And finally, the notifications are overwhelming. If you don't know how to manage the notifications, They are overwhelming. Okay, and we had to go back and look at how we're going to how we're going to handle that. So there's a couple of things for you to consider here. If you're at the stage where you are responsible for rolling out Teams and you're thinking about rolling it out, consider building this in, because you'll get rid of the point 1 and 2 before you even start. And then points 3, 4, and 5, if you handle that properly, they won't even know that it's a potential problem. They'll just be going around saying, wow, you can find anything in Teams. The chat works really well, and I can hook up with my colleagues really easily. And the notifications are a really simple way for me to know what's going on, and I can manage my work in there. Okay, so they won't even get to the point of these being problems. Now, the way I'm going to position this, it may be that you actually are using Teams and you've got this problem. So I'm going to talk about the way we handled it, and then I'm just going to run through each section as if I was talking to actual end users and colleagues. Another point is, because of the limitations of the Teams setup we're in now, and the fact that the ability to pop a meeting out and look at content isn't available just yet, I've tried to replicate it as much as possible in the slides. In reality, I would always just do it live. Another thing is confidentiality. If I use one of my other tenants, you might see content in there you're not meant to see. So I've tried to replicate it the best I can. But if you decide to use somebody's tips, and you're welcome to use my slides, then I recommend that you do it live. Now, if you've already rolled Teams out, then it's probably worth you revisiting people. I know that a lot of people did that 3 months ago. They just chucked it out there. And I know you had to, but it's definitely worth you revisiting, because that isn't adoption, just chucking it out. You need to go back and visit, and maybe it might be some parts of your business need a Teams reboot. Okay, and one of the things that we did, we packaged up what you're looking at now, and we went and did a Teams reboot with that team. So we go there for an hour, spend about half an hour or so on this content, handle that, and then we had a 30-minute ask me anything. So that's maybe a third way you could use this content. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the first two. So this is the excite and the equip stage. This is the getting people interested, and then the training stages. So this was super common. Straight away, people turned around to us and said they don't understand how Teams fits in and when they should use what. So what we looked at was the collaboration and communication tools that they were using. Now, when you look at this now, this might not be a perfect fit for your organization. And if we use this model here, we would change it depending on the client. So I've just got a nice generic one for you. And now I want you to picture what you use. Okay, so these are circles of collaboration. The bigger the circle, the wider the collaboration. So what we did, so we explained that people have got their OneDrive. So those are for the me type documents. So it's things that I'm working on, my personal storage is for ad hoc sharing. Maybe that you're doing your drafts in there that you're going to move later. The sort of documents that you have in here are the documents which you take with you when you move to another team. If you're having to take stuff out and hand them back to someone taking over your role, then those documents maybe shouldn't have been in here in the first place. So it's not a perfect rule, but that's a good place just to position that one place where you can work. Let's go a little bit wider. So we're now looking at the inner circle. We've moved away from the micro circle to the inner circle. This is where we talk about Teams. We explain it's the chat-based collaboration tool. It includes SharePoint. It doesn't compete with existing SharePoints. You can bring those in. You get up to 10,000 people. Unless you do something by default, the content is not discoverable outside the team. And this is for their day-to-day team or the project that they're working on. Okay, so we called that the inner circle. Now I know that you guys have seen other versions of the inner circle, the outer circle, but for us this worked really well, and it was really well received by the people who saw it. Let's go a little bit wider. Now, of course, this is going to depend on your organization, but this is where we positioned for this organization. We positioned the intranet, and we explained that it's built on SharePoint, so it feels familiar, and it's generally for publishing finished content out for people for them to read. It's a little bit one way, but it's for publishing content. Out here, we also have SharePoint, and for this organization, it was the organizational wide formal document collaboration. So whereas Teams is more about the people and the chat, and you have documents. In this organization, it is positioned more that SharePoint is about documents that does have some collaboration around it. They used it for governance and records management. Content was discoverable by everyone if they wanted it to be, and it was more document focused. And out here as well, we have Yammer as well. It's a great place for shouting out. We also explained that because of a lot of groups ended up going into Teams, that left Yammer to do it what it does best. It's great for company-wide shout-outs, keeping up to date, and actually Teams isn't competing with Yammer. It almost gives it a reboot because it takes some workload off Yammer and to leave it to do what it does best. Now, this external circle for this organization, this is where we talk about email, sending email out, external access, systems that hook up with third-party people. But this is what we used to explain where Teams fits in. Okay, now of course it doesn't fit everyone, you'd have to tweak it, but we found that over nearly 2.5 years and clients since, through thousands of people, this was one of the most useful slides that they saw, that they said they saw during the training. Okay, so let's move on to the next objection. And I know that you've all heard this. You've all heard people say to you, it's just another thing you have to check. And you know what? If you're not a trainer and you're not involved in adoption and you're sitting there and someone gives you Teams, you're probably thinking this yourself. Okay, so let's have a look at the situation we've got here. So we have on the left-hand side some things you might use at work. So you might use Delve, you might use OneDrive, you have Outlook and Skype. And on the right-hand side over here, we've got some things that you use with your team or the project you're working on. So you have OneNote, SharePoint, Planner, all your Office documents. You might have videos in stream. You got the internet, the intranet, anything that's starting with HTTP. You've got CRM systems, portals, and the tools that your organizational uses, and you've got Yammer as well. Now you picture someone else joins your team. You've got to point them in the direction of all these things, and if you just plonk Teams in the middle, it's quite reasonable for someone to say to you, "You've just given me something else." But what we did with this slide to help people understand is we moved it along, and we explained that if it's done properly, and you'll find that Delve can see into Teams. You can see your OneDrive from inside Teams. You can see your calendar in there. You can have your email in Teams as well if you want to. Skype's going away. Then over on the right-hand side, we also bring in all our OneNotes, our SharePoint sites, because Teams and SharePoint don't compete. They're complementary, and you can have them all across the top and tabs. Our documents, our videos, all the portals. So you imagine that you're working on a project or something you're working on, and you have someone new join. You don't know how you have to share all those resources with them. You add them to the team. You then bring them into, put them towards a certain channel, and then the whole working day is across the top. And if someone's coming to help a colleague for the day, they can just step into a team, step into the channel, and then they can just get straight on with it. And when you're offboarding somebody and they're leaving the team, when they leave the team, they lose access to all this stuff as well. So positioning it like that, instead of them thinking it's just another thing that I have to look at, we sold it as the thing that you look at, and we often could call it the place that you go to work. Okay, and from a visual point of view, then positioning it with this slide was a nice, useful way to position that. Okay, so that was the very initial. That's the bit that you will hear initially. Okay, these next stages, this is the embed stage. So this is when people have been using it for a little while, and they don't know that they're going to have this problem. Okay, and that's why you can head it off. They don't know that they're facing this, and it might be if you haven't got external help, it might be that you don't know this is coming down the line to you as well. But what we found is that when we went back proactively to see how they're getting on, or a team come to us and say, look, Teams is just not sticking. Can you come and give us a help? We need to reboot it. Give us help. This is what we found. So these were the 3 things that people were talking to us about. So the first thing is, I can never find anything in Teams. Okay, we heard it all the time. They just couldn't find the things that they were looking for. So the answer for this is just to supercharge their search. And if you do this up front in your initial training, they won't even have this problem. They'll just think that Teams is amazing and you can find anything. So you can cut this off. But of course, you can also go back and revisit people who are struggling with this. So we're going to look at 4 things. Okay, so this first one, you probably know that this is quite new, but I've added this in. So originally it was 3, but it would be 4 things if I was presenting this now. So let's look at the first one, contextual search. So Do you know where the thing is or the conversation is that you're looking for? If you know where it is, go to that place in Teams, press Control and F, and some of you might not be aware of this. This only came out last week. I know that it's been discussed for a while, but if you press Control and F, at the top up there, you will see that on my screen that Teams is now looking at this location. And folks, this is another reason why I decided not to do it live, because if this is a live screen, this would be so tiny you couldn't see it. Okay, so hopefully you'll forgive me for using PowerPoint. So up here, I'm going to do my search. So I'm going to say I want to search for the term change. And then over on the left-hand side, I'm going to see the results in this channel, because I went to the channel first. And of course, if I click on it on the left-hand side, it will then be shown on the right-hand side. I was doing a search for change, and the first result over here on the right is that track pack for change. Okay, so that's a really nice new feature, and I expect that to go down really well with users. If you've got a community at work, I would go back and share that tip if you're not aware of it, because that contextual search, Control and F, is going to be super popular. Okay, so maybe you don't know where the thing is that you're looking for, and that's like part of the topic we're talking about. We can't find anything, so maybe they don't even know where it is. So you've got to teach people how to filter properly, and if they can filter properly by doing what I'm about to show you, they can find anything. So let's have a look at this. So I'm going to type change at the top, press enter, and then you'll see that we've got some results down the left-hand side. Let's have a little closer look at this though. Let's just go in a little bit. So here we start off by looking at the messages. Okay, so maybe you know who the message was from. So we click on the from button there, and maybe you can pop that person's name in, and that will filter down and reduce the results. Okay, it might be that you know what type of message it was. Was it in a chat? Was it in a channel? You can filter that if you want to, and that will again narrow it down. Maybe you don't know that, but you do know some other things about it. So we click on more filters, and then maybe I know the subject. Do I know approximately what date range this thing happened in? Maybe I know the team. I can then go down to the channel level. But if you know that, you'd probably have used the last tip, right? Maybe your app mentioned, maybe it has an attachment. So if you use those, you should be able to find the thing that you're looking for. You just need to know a little bit about it, and you probably do. That's why you're looking for the conversation or the chat in the first place. You should be able to find it. Now, maybe you're searching for a person. So in the top, I did a search for the name Mark. And here I'll get all the marks in my organization. I can click on the name and I can engage with them. So here's an example of how I should be able to find anybody through Teams, but maybe I'm looking for a file. And again, I can filter it by the team where that file is in, if I know that. I can look at the file type, or maybe I know somebody who's modified it. And make sure your users understand that this is going to look at the name of the file and the content inside that file. Let's just go back to where we started. So I've done a search for change at the top. I've changed the type to channel, and then I've got some results here. And then when your users click on these results, you'll see it will jump them to the chat, to the team, to the channel, and they can just navigate super quickly through there. So one of the things to get across to people is that they don't have to go wading through loads of teams. They can use that filtering, and they can very quickly get to where they need to go. Okay, so this is taking search to the next level, I would say. So this is, users love this. It gives them the heebie-jeebies from a privacy point of view, and you need to cover that off. But the WhoBot is a great tool. Now, let's say one of your colleagues is about to start on a new project, okay, and they don't really know a lot about it. They can use the WhoBot to find out who does know about it. So going on to going past that, the basic search that we've done, you get the WhoBot to search for us quicker than we'll ever be able to do. So let's have a look at this. On the left-hand side of the app bar here, I'm going to go to the ellipsis at the bottom, okay, and then I'm going to click on Who. Now, you see this has gone straight to that screen. When you do this or your colleagues do it, make sure you include the fact that they're going to have to tell it to install. They're going to have to give it permissions to search for them. And users get a little bit careful. Users just get worried about giving things permissions. So make sure that you cover off the fact that it's okay for Who to do a search on their behalf. So let's look at some of the things that we can do with who. We can ask who somebody is, we can find somebody, we can find experts on a topic with who knows about, who works with somebody, who reports to somebody, who's somebody's manager, who's got the same manager as. You can then ask it, who have you emailed about something? Who was you in the same meeting about something? Or who have you messaged? Now, you probably guess straight away that who is then looking at different places. So it's looking at your organization and who works with people. It's looking at conversations and chats in Teams, and it's looking at Exchange for your email and your calendar. Now, let's just have a look at one of these and just see the sort of results we get. I'm going to ask it who knows about a certain topic. So just look down here where it says, type your question. I'm going to type who knows about Teams. Okay, so now it's going off to all the chats that I'm involved with, all the conversations in every team, in every channel. It is looking at every single thing that everybody says and they interact with and what they do. And then based on that, it's using artificial intelligence but behind the scenes to rank the level of knowledge it thinks people have on that topic at the moment. Okay, so that is a great way to find somebody who knows something, and they might be able to help you, but you can find out even more about what they know. So let me click on this person's name. So it then does a second search. It says, who is Mark Thompson in this case? And this screen comes up. And then right from here, I can message Mark right from the screen. I can send him an email. I'm going to skip that middle one. I could just start an impromptu video call, an impromptu voice call. I can see their manager, who they're working with, their peers. So I can find out about the person and I can contact them right from this screen. I can take it even further. So I'm going to click on the organization button in the middle. And from here, I can see across the top, look next to my name or the person's name that I'm looking at, I can look at all the chats that I've got with that person, all the files that we're sharing. I can look at their organization and that will show me who they work for and who works for them, and it'll give me the org chart that they're working with. And I can look at their activity. And what I'm going to get here is all their recent activity, everything they've said and done in Teams and across all the Teams and chats that we're both in. Now, it tells me what it is. So you can say that's a chat, that's a reply. And let me click on one of these. Okay, so what happened now? It's going to jump, in this case, to a team, to a certain channel, and it's going to take me to that conversation and show me what they've been saying. Okay, and then if I click on the person's little disk there, I can click on there and I can email them straight from there. So if they're searching, someone's searching for information about a topic and they're starting from scratch, then the Who bot is an amazing tool, but you really should cover off the privacy point of view. I've not seen anything that I couldn't go and browse for, but it might take me a month to go and do what Who bot can do in 4 seconds. Okay, so it's a super tool. Just cover up the privacy thing, because whenever I've demoed that in person, you can see people's faces worrying straight away. So make sure you cover up the privacy. Okay, so, and people saying they can't find files that they've looked at. So this is the last one. So this is just obviously some well-established functionality, but if you bundle it up with the search, it seems to gel really nicely with people there. So quite often, and we've all done this. You know, we've read a file. We want to find it again and we can't find it. We don't know what it was called. We don't know what search term we used. And it may be that you've just saved the file to the wrong location and you don't know where it went. Okay, so make sure that your users know that they can come into Teams, they can click on the Files app on the left-hand side, and they can then click on Recent. Okay, and it will show them the last 3 weeks, of or so of files. So the users that I've worked with find that super useful, and you can also sell that as part of how Teams isn't just another thing you have to go to; it becomes the place that you go to work. So if you use those 4 points, your users and your colleagues will walk away with the impression that they can find anything in Teams, and they will never get to that point where they're complaining they can't find anything in Teams. This will become a selling point, but if you don't tick it off, it's going to become a pain point further down the line. Okay, so our next one, I can't keep track of chats. The chats can get a bit noisy, can't they? Let's have a look at this. So you have to teach people how to manage their chats properly. Now, what I'm going to show you now, none of what I'm going to show you is rocket science, right? But if you don't explicitly point it out, people have quite a painful path trying to work it out for themselves. So this is the chat window. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, just so we get a closer look. And you can see I've got a chat here. First one for you to tick off is if people have to cross-reference lots of chats, or they want to look at a chat while looking at something else in Teams, just double point out that they can pop those chats out now. And remember, you can pop out multiple chats. If you press it twice, it will often put them on top of each other. So make sure people know to drag them apart. And that's the first thing they can do. But let's have a look at what else we can do. So from a management point of view, if they run into trouble with something's important to them sliding down, okay, just point out they can pin it, just like I've done with this chat I'm having Mark at the top, and then that will stay at the top, and that important chat doesn't slide down and get pushed off the bottom. Now, from a managing the chats point of view, if the colleague that you're working with is a bit of a chatterbox, then the mute option is super useful. You'll still see the chat. The other person doesn't know that you've muted them, but it just means you don't get notifications. It will go bold, you get a little black dot, and you can still see that you got a message. Now, I actually recommend, and this works really well for the people that I've done it with, is that when you have read a message and there's no longer any actions to do, just hide it straight away. Okay, and then your chats will be nice and neat like this. So if you've read it, there's no actions, hide it, and then the only thing you have here are chats which you've pinned because they're super important, things you haven't read, and things you have to do. Okay, so that then turns your chat into a productivity tool and not something that just annoys you. So hide that chat. When you or somebody else resumes the conversation, it pops back up with all the history. I'd also sell the point that this is a great way to manage relationships and deal with your contacts. You can add people to your favorite contacts and then go into contacts up here. And you can say to them, you've got the option to be notified when someone becomes available. Of course, they might be used to this from Skype, but as well as to encourage people into their chat, those two features are a nice little plus to the core functionality inside chat. Now, that was one-to-one chats we were looking at. Let's focus on group chats. So these group chats are up to 250 people, so they can get a bit noisy. Okay, so let's have a closer look at this. So if you have lots of group chats, you'll just get a whole load of names across the top, and then you have to go into them to see what a topic is about because they're just a list of names and loads of words, and you have to go in. That creates a bit of an overhead for your users, which they won't appreciate. So teach them how to rename their group chats. Make sure even though that button is staring at them all day long, honestly, people just don't click around. Okay, so they're busy enough that it's not their core role learning how to use Teams. So make sure you explicitly point this out. I'm going to call this the moderator role. I'm going to save it, and you can see that this chat is now called that. So when this chat's got any new content, if it's a topic which isn't urgent, I just won't go and have a look at it. Okay, so I'm more efficient that way. What else can I do? If they are a huge chat and you're running like a little bit of a project in there or an activity in there, and your users are having trouble keeping track of the documents, keeping track of the links, make sure they know how to add a tab at the top, all the documents you're using, the websites you're referring to, the portals, and then this group chat that last week they hated now becomes this really efficient little work group, and it's got everything they need, and it then becomes a real nice, efficient way to work. So make sure they know how to add those tabs across the top. Now, of course, you've still got the same functionality in the group chat as you had before, but I'm going to suggest that you pass this on as well. The way you use them are slightly different. Of course, you might pin the group chats just like you did one-to-one chats, but group chats with 250 people, they can be super noisy. Okay, so there's straight off, there's a reason to use mute. Now, it might be that you've done your bit. You can't leave the group because you've still got to work in there, but you've done your bit, and then you can mute it. Or maybe you have a once a month cycle that you're working on, and once a month everyone has like 3 or 4 days, maybe at month end, working like crazy people. And then when you've done your bit, just hide the chat, and then for next month when it starts off again, someone kicks it off again, then it will reappear with all the history. So make sure they know how to manage the group chat and a couple of scenarios that they might choose depending on the content of the group chat. So what it's used for will depend on how you use these options, and that will be different to the one-to-one chats. And you know what? If you're done with that chat, just leave it. Okay, don't be in chats that aren't your business because you're going to be busy enough. Telling people, and this is another point that it's hard to get people to get their heads around. telling people to deliberately ignore information available to them doesn't feel right, because they've just spent the last decade of their working life trying to find stuff, whereas Teams serves up so much. Telling them to deliberately ignore stuff so they don't get overwhelmed doesn't feel right. But make sure that you tell them that it's okay just to leave something they're not interested in. Now, saving for later. So I don't see much of a use case personally for on the one-to-one chats for this, but in the group chats, when you've got reams of conversation, and you've got something in there, and you want to get rid of the chat, but you've seen some stuff you need to do. You want to read it properly later, or you want to action it later, and you don't want to be going through there and trying to find it, because we all know that trying to find stuff in chats, it's just a couple of extra steps. So teach them how to save things for later. So we've got some content in here. So I'm going to click on this message, and you'll all be familiar with this. And then when I click on the ellipsis for the message, now folks, I know that the aspect's all wrong there, but I've made it so much bigger, so hopefully you can see it better. But I'm going to click on its ellipsis, and I'm going to tell Teams I want to save this for later. Okay, and then make sure they know that once they've cleaned up their chat, when they get to that time of the day, maybe they set an hour a day aside, for catching up, for actioning stuff on certain projects, go to their photograph or their initials in the top right-hand corner, click on saved, and there we've got our list of things to read and things to do. And here you can just work through it. You can see I've clicked on the first one. It's highlighted in yellow on the right-hand side. I can read it, I can action it, and then I click on that purple save icon there, and it drops off the list. And this is one of those few things in Teams that actually becomes empty. Okay, so when you're done, when you look at your saved items and it's done, you know that you're super up to date. And from people getting on with Teams psychologically, teaching them how to do this will just make them feel a little bit happy with Teams, because they'll like what they see when it's empty. Again, you'll recognize this from earlier. You can go to your chats, especially your group chats, go to the chat, then press Control and F, just like I'm going to do here, and you'll see at the top there, it's now limiting its scope to this group chat. I can say I want to look for signposted. I just type that at the top. I press Enter, and then all the results down the left-hand side appear. And when I click on it, it will appear on the right-hand side. So go through that with your colleagues. Maybe do it yourself if you're struggling, but go through that with your colleagues as part of your training or as part of a Teams reboot, and get people to fall in love with chat again. So the chat is a great piece of functionality, but you know what? Just a few of those little behaviors make a big difference. Okay, so the notifications are overwhelming. Now, I think this is arguably one of the most important things that I'm covering off here. I've just heard it so many times that people they just sink under the notifications, and they maybe they've signed up to Teams and they've said they want to follow things, and they want to keep in touch with what's going on, and they want to know what's going on, all these other projects, and before you know it, you all know what it's like, how quickly that you can sink under those notifications. So we want to teach people how to master their notifications. So they've got to start off with some groundwork. Okay, so teach them how to go through their feed. They look at their feed and it is just a mess of stuff they don't even know. Make sure they understand that the message, the notification, tells them what team it's come from, and it tells them the channel that it comes from. And right from in here, I can click on the ellipsis. Now, if this is just absolutely of no interest to me at all, right from in here, I click on the ellipsis, click on channel notifications, and then I can dial back those notifications. Make sure they're clear that I'm not doing this action on that message. I'm doing it on the source of the message, and then this will stem that flow for future days, and it will stop that flood of notifications coming in. Make sure they understand what all of these do. Do I want them notified of new posts? Now, if this channel was my day-to-day job, if it is the place I go to work, I'd probably want all replies as well. But make sure you warn people that if they turn everything on, including replies, they're going to get a lot of content, including anybody who does a channel mention. Now, I know somebody who used to say, hi, channel name, every time they did a message. And if you're in one of those teams with that person, then you might want to be dialing that back as well. So if these messages are irrelevant, make sure they turn it all off, click save, and then they can move on. That should tidy up the feed. But then this methodology now is a way to work with it, just a way to organize a method for you to make the most from your feed. I recommend people start by going to the top and clicking on filter, click on the ellipsis, and then we filter by mentions. And the reason I'll start with mentions is that these are the most important ones. This is where someone has mentioned you by name and you've got to read it or you've got to do it. Okay, so this is a good place to start. So go through all your mentions. Okay, and then when you've gone through that, then go and filter by unread. Now, your unread list will be a lot shorter now because you've read your mentions. That'll take a lot out of your unread. And then the unread is another one. There's not many of them. It's another one of those lists in Teams that will become blank. So you can work through them and you'll look at it and you'll say, I've got no unread content in Teams. I'm fully up to date. Okay, so that is super satisfying. While you're doing this though, as you go along, save stuff for later. So as I'm looking at my app mentions, as I'm looking at the things that I'm looking at my unread stuff, similar to the chats, I'm looking at here and maybe I want to look at this QR code later. So I click on the message, I click on the ellipsis and I save that for later, just like I did earlier. Then when your colleague is then ready to actually catch up with the reading, catch up with it with the work. So this is almost like a reading list or a to-do list. Go into your photograph or your initials on the top right, click on saved. And now you can see, so this is similar to what you saw earlier, but I've just added that previous message. So you can work on this, you can read it, and then you can untick or uncheck these bookmark icons, these purple icons. And again, that will be empty. And you know that you've read all your mentions, you've got no unread messages, you've done your reading list and your action list, you're super up to date. But if you've still got the heebie-jeebies that you might just be missing out on something still, you can do a just in case email. So people feel a little bit happier knowing it's got their back. Now you need to be careful with email because of course we want to reduce email and then Teams sending emails. Sometimes people will pick up on that and they'll just have it as an excuse to have a dig at Teams. But I find that this is a useful backup to what I've just shown you. So we're going to click on our photograph. Then we're going to go to this time. We're going to go to settings and go to notifications over on the left hand side. By the way, folks, over the next couple of weeks, have a look in here, just check in settings. Okay, there's some nice new features coming into Teams, including, you know, the way the control bar is right in the middle. Okay, they're moving that to the top left hand side, to the top right hand side, but you need to opt in. Okay, so at some point, make sure that you go here, you go to your settings, and in here, you'll be able to opt into that and it will update where that control bar and a couple of other nice little features. So look out for that over the next couple of weeks. Okay, but while I'm in here, I'm going to click on notifications. Okay, and down here you'll see I've got missed activity emails. Now for me, it works to have one of these a day. Okay, now because I live in Teams, I don't get many emails, but if I do miss something, if something happens out of hours, if I start work late, I can just get a roundup at the end of the day if I've missed something, and end users seem to really like that. Okay, so just finishing off the notifications. If you go through those points there, people will be super comfortable with notifications and they'll look at it as a great feature of Teams before it even occurs to them to complain about it. Okay, so recap here. At the early stages, make sure you show colleagues how Teams fits in. Make sure they know that it's the place that you work, position it like that. And that puts them in a good mindset to learn what's coming next. Make Teams the easiest place to find anything and anyone. Make sure it's the tool at work where you can find anything. Demonstrate chat management techniques and the relationship side of it, making sure that they know how to be notified when people are available. And then help turn the activity feed into their rose-tinted window into Teams and their working life. Okay, so we're not even getting to the point where they're complaining about it. Get them to love the feed, almost like their inbox that's super easy to manage, and it's a place that they want to go. Consider how you're going to do this, whether you want to do you want to start off with your staff, whether you want to go and do a Teams reboot. But we've got a call to action here for you. Personally, start using the search, the chat, and the activity feed tips yourself. Okay, and if you can, at one of your team meetings, maybe just show some of the points. I've deliberately shared this whole presentation with you, and if you're happy to have it, also in the notes area, I've made sure that I include the click by click stuff. Almost everything I've said is in there, so you could lift and shift some of the topics, and you can take it and you can present this to your staff. You just say the words that I've said, click where I tell you to click, and maybe pick one of those and maybe do a show and tell at your next team meeting. Add those 5 topics that we covered to your existing training for the new users, and then consider doing a short standalone session for existing users based on this content for a reboot. I recommend half an hour to go to position teams, go through the features that I've shown you, and then have an Ask Me Anything. I recommend it because we did it so many times. We tested it, I don't even know how many times, and it works beautifully. It's a really nice format. Okay, folks, I want to thank you for your time. I know that it's just after lunch. You guys are probably super busy. You got loads of work. So really appreciate the 45 minutes or so you're spending with me. Up on the screen there, you'll see there's another URL. There's a Teams meeting. So if we can, I'm just going to hang out over there for a little bit. So if you want to chat about the things that we've done, you want to know anything about the people I work with and the framework in which I work. So I've talked about me and I and we, but there's a whole team that are responsible for the successes that we've seen as well. So come and join me over there. Give us some feedback. Make sure that you, because it's great for Commsverse because they're already prepping for next year, and it also just helps me just position the next time I do this session. And hit me up on social media if you want to. Okay, folks. So, Stuart, I think that just about wraps up my main content. Got spare 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, as you said, we've got 3-4 minutes. So just a few questions that have come in. So Jackie Wright has asked, is the WhoBot there by default, or does the organization have to allow it? Okay, so it'll be there by default unless your organization has disallowed it. Okay, so it doesn't, and the reason it's by default, and the reason that I would recommend people use it, is that it doesn't compromise privacy. It has no privileges that you don't have. Okay, so it'll be there by default unless somebody said it can't be. And a follow-up question, don't have a name on it, but it says, do you know if the WhoBot requires Office 365 to work fully? Our Outlook is 2010 Exchange Server, so I presume that question is whether it requires Exchange Online or whether it could work without that. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 parts of an answer here. So based on how Microsoft 365 works, my first answer is I'm going to give you my best guess, and it's the online version. But what I'm going to do, because now you've asked the question, I don't know it. I want to find out. So what I'm going to do, folks, I'm going to go away and find out, and I'll put the answer in the chat area, and I'll make sure that I follow up in the other feedback area as well. I'll make sure that I share that, and also on my social media, I'm going to post that as an anonymous question, and I'll make sure that I follow up as well, folks. Perfect. Another question: if I have multiple tenants that I share with, for instance, customers and partners, can I coordinate or populate all my contacts from the different tenants and set these up when they're available to be notified? So I presume that's kind of a little bit of a question about how do we manage if we're members of lots and lots of tenants? Okay, folks. So short answer is no. Okay, so but because of the way, because you know that Teams is relatively new, and that whole the people they're looking after initially are the end users, and of course they are. But some of us work in lots of tenants, and they're catching up with some of the features that we might like. However, something that just a little tip for you. I often work with 4 clients in a week, so I will use the new Chromium version of Edge, which is a superstar product, by the way. The old version, I'm not going to say a lot about it because I don't want to talk bad about anything. The old version wasn't great, but the new version is a superstar product, and you can set up profiles for all the organizations that you work in, and I just hop in and out of them, go to office.com in each of them, and I can have multiple instances open. I just hop in and out of other tenants, and I use the new version of Chromium Edge for that, and that works brilliantly, guys. And that's I know there's other ways you can do it, but for me that works really well. That's perfect. Thank you very much. Rachel just said, great tips. You've given me some brilliant ideas to use in some short training videos for my end users. Thanks, Mark. And Anna has said, where can I download a copy of the presentation, please? Thanks. It was a great talk. Okay, folks. So you can just look at my screen now. I'm going to very quickly double check, Stuart. Just confirm for me, Stuart, that you can see my screen. I've got it, yeah. Okay, so in here, I'm just going to go through these teams and presentations. There you go, folks. Presentations. Files, and then we've got certain dates in here, and there's one already in here. You'll see it's got the session,
the person's name and the name of the session, and you can download that. And folks, like I say, I am super happy for you to use what I've taught you. It's the circles of collaboration is super popular, but yeah, feel free, guys. If you use it, I'd be delighted. Feel free just to take what I've done and change it for your organization and go and run with it.
Are out of time. There's a couple of questions that have just kind of still in the queue here about search and about wildcard search and how we can make search a little bit more reliable. Some people who are just struggling to get search to find exactly what they would need. So what I would recommend is that we do pop over into the post-session networking goteams.fans/BRK120. So thank you ever so much for your time, Mark. That's everything that we've got, all the time we've got for this session. So please head over to the breakout area, check the Q&A for the link to join the meeting. Thank you for watching and have a great day and the rest of the conference, everyone. Thank you very much, Mark.
Cheers, guys.